So welcome everyone. Thanks, committee members. We've got a couple of, we've certainly got one, apologies, we'll come to that. Member of the public, welcome. County press are here, welcome. And our supporting officers from Legal, so thank you all for taking the time and trouble to come. Apologies, please, Marie.
Chairman, we've received apologies from Councillor Pitcher and Councillor Peace. Councillor Bacon also gave his apologies, and Councillor Julie James Evans is here as a substitute.
Fine, thank you. No change of membership other than that. Yeah. Minutes. If you've read the minutes, you're happy with the minutes. There were no matters arising, as I can see. Happy for us to accept those. Thank you. Thank you. Declaration of interest. Any declaration of interest, Julie? Council taxpayers, Chris, and that sort of thing. There's nothing, Joseph, you want to add to that, is it? Joseph, nothing you want to add to that? That broader declaration of interest. Yeah, thanks. Okay, clear.
Yeah, actually, I'll say the same as Councillor James Evans, that the person or the potential purchaser in item A is someone that is known to me. So
You'll vote, would you?
Non-pecuniary.
You will vote, yeah. Okay, thank you. It's just one of us voting or two. Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. Public question time, and we have a member of the public. Have you got a question for us?
I'm a resident at Black House Quay. I have one of the residential moorings, and there's another 4 moorings as well as mine. Our concerns have been raised recently with the article in the county press in regards to proposals for the development of Black House Quay. And I'm really after some kind of safeguarding in terms of those residential moorings and an idea that they're not going to be impacted by those developments. So that's my question. I don't know if it sounds more like a statement, but that's what we're after, if that's okay.
Thanks. So the question is, what safeguards do you have as a residential mooring in view of development of company offices?
If I might just say that actually our municipal moorings as well. You're tenant by council, aren't you?
Yeah, Jonathan obviously knows.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you, Chairman. In relation to the item later on the agenda, which refers to the in principle disposal of W5 and W6, which is the building and the adjoining land at Black House Quay, that will not impact access to the waterfront or the berths. The proposal is purely limited to the building itself and to the land. I can confirm there's no impact from the proposal in terms of the item on the agenda.
Thank you, Sean. Is that clear? And do you have a further question?
You say that, but I see there was a raft of proposals. One of them was eco-friendly, some kind of accommodation, and that would be on the quay. So the question would be, if that was agreed, where would they go? What impact that would have as well?
certainly in terms of the initial disposal would be of the building and the parcel of land, and that's very clearly defined on Appendix 2 of the report to be considered later. Any development wouldn't be outside of that envelope because that is the limit of the land currently leased to the tenant. And the very preliminary discussions we've had would result in any development being contained within that red line boundary. So any redevelopment or development of the site would be contained within that and wouldn't impact on future provision of houseboat moorings or commercial or domestic moorings.
So give you some comfort.
The last bit was would not impact. Sorry, I didn't quite hear it. Okay,
Would not impact.
so the moorings are safe.
In relation to the proposals that are contained in this report, yes, there's no impact on those berths at all.
Okay.
If it's helpful, Chair, within the overall Isle of Wight Council Harbour Master Plan, there on both sides of the river, particularly on the eastern side where we're not doing so much development, we are looking at actually improving and increasing the amount of moorings that we do have there. And the intention, as I understand within the master plan, is that will be municipal moorings. So if Jonathan, you can add anything else to that, but that is my understanding of the Isle of Wight Council's intention.
Yeah, I haven't seen the updated one. We may lose a couple with the bridge, but we might gain some more with that. So it depends on whether we get the extra pontoon spaces with the bridge. I haven't seen the updated one. I've only seen the master plan from about 2 years ago.
Any further? Yep. Okay. It's a pleasure. Thank you for your question. There'd be no. Sean, do you want to do that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, everyone's had the reports and been able to review those. I thought it'd be useful to pick out some key points over the last 5 months. In terms of employees, there's a slight underspend forecast, £4,500 to year end. However, in terms of premises costs, there's a forecast 15.4k overspend. That mainly relates to increased utility costs, electric and water, which, as members will appreciate, that is an issue being experienced both corporately and nationally, and is being looked at by the corporate finance team. That is, however, partially offset by a forecast reduction in waste disposal costs of 1.8k. Supplies and services, there is a forecast 7.8k overspend. Having looked down through the finance reports, that's nothing specific. It's a combination of a lot of minor issues. In terms of contracted services, there's a forecasted 12.6k overspend. That mainly relates to replacing ground chains at the Folly. That is a one-off cost and will ensure we can continue to maintain the swing moorings there and achieve the income we are budgeted to. You'll also see from the finance reports that we've now broken the income down into key specific areas rather than groups of income codes. So the forecast will be refined over the remainder of the year and become more accurate as the year goes on. Leasing income is over the original budget figure by approximately 26,000, and that recognises the fact we've had ongoing negotiations with existing tenants in terms of renewing leases, moving them onto a more commercial footing. And other income is down by approximately 20,000. So it's a combination of slight underspends and slight overspends. You're welcome to take any questions.
Thank you, Sean. Julie.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. So the Folly, the reduction in the income on the Folly, that's just going to be because all the work's been done. So that will be, better get that back next year. Yeah. But when are they going to be ready again?
When
Sorry, yeah, when are they going to be ready?
So the moorings are being started sort of next month. There's 2 chains, one that's being totally replaced on the west side of the folly, and 2 lines of moorings that are just getting sections repaired. That's being undertaken by Cowes as they have the correct kit. So they're going to do it over the winter, and then it should last quite a long time. The last lot are about 20 years old. And we're recycling the old floating bridge chain, ground chain. So yeah, should be good.
Okay.
It was just regarding the folly again. So I think most of these were planned works around the folly, were they, or not? 'Cause I'm just thinking it just seems a bit unfair to project an income when we knew they were going to be out of action. So we're doing budget setting, or was these all emergency works that weren't foreseen?
The works on the swingers, which is just the swing moorings, they were investigated. We got them lifted last winter to see what the ground chain is. It's quite difficult to guess when they're going to go. We knew it was something we had to investigate, hence we lifted them. So then it's one of those ongoing things. It's better to lift them and actually look at the conditions instead of saying, right, every 10 years we're changing the whole system. So it is part of the maintenance of them, but it's quite difficult to guess which year they'll come into without having an automatic changing them, even if they don't need it, system. So it is one of those things that when they do require changing, they're changed.
So budget forecasting for next financial year would be easier because you wouldn't be expecting anything horrible to come out of the water there. Okay, thank you, Chair.
With this, just to add to our overall, yeah.
Councillor Jones Evans' last remark was the key one there, to make sure that we have started the budget planning process for next year, and we do need it to be extremely tight and accurate. We are facing a lot of problems, probably the greatest problems I think financially we've ever had, and so we do need to be very realistic about things, and surprises will not be welcomed.
Is it true, just thanks, Chris, is it true to say that a decision we may take later today might impact those numbers?
In relation to the Black House Quay item, it would impact in terms of a potential capital receipt. They would have a very small income in terms of impact in terms of revenue budget, given the very low levels of rent.
Sorry, just one final question, Chair. It's just about the key card, electric card income. Does that automatically get sort of upgraded to the latest rates, or are we on a fixed contract with that? Obviously, it's another hot topic, isn't it, on every household at the moment?
The electric cards are preset at the meter. We sell them for £1. We got them reset after numerous years about 8 months ago, so the beginning of the summer. So we changed the units of electricity they got for £1. We are looking at updating it again, but to do it we need to bring in electrical engineers to physically change them on each meter. So hopefully it's now steadying and leveling off, and then we get it done once, and then it will see us through.
We're in a negative position at the moment then.
Just as a follow-up to that, the council's been in the process of negotiating its energy contracts over the last couple of months, and as we know, the energy markets are particularly volatile. I think those have now been concluded. Once we've got confirmation of the unit rates, as Jonathan said, we can get the meters adjusted to reflect the current market rate that the council is paying. So we weren't able to do that until the negotiations on the energy contract were concluded. So that is a piece of work we will be doing shortly.
Thanks, Sean. Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say what Sean just said. We have actually concluded them now, so we do know what the unit rates are. And I think we should move on to those as rapidly as we possibly can.
I'll assume that adjusting them doesn't offset too heavily the increase, the uplift in rate. It
should just mean that the money that we take for that we sell the electric cards for will actually then equal what we actually pay for it. Adjusted, they were getting probably more electric than the pounds were, so we just need to step it back up again. Correct.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, so you probably saw the fairly extensive article yesterday and this morning in the media about the rates there. Although the gas rates have fallen back slightly. You know, we moved from a 1x position a year ago to a 10x position at the worst time, and now we're back to 7x. I mean, our rates are fixed now at 4x, but it's still a big change. I think the key thing is to make sure that we, in a way, we don't wait for those rates to come in. And then always been a lag situation where we're effectively in a loss-making model until we fix them. We have to get ahead of the curve a little bit on those and make sure that we, as soon as we have that information coming in, we almost anticipate new rates being delivered to get ready for that actual delivery date. The good news is we've got a year now where we know it's fairly fixed, unless the market rates, you know, deviate by a very large percentage, which gives them an out on the clause. I think we're okay.
Julie.
Thank you, Chair. I was just really another differential I want one a little bit more information on was the recharge to other revenue accounts. The budget was 10,000 and forecast was 9, but now we're looking at only 1,000. So I was just wondering if that was quite a big differential. And maybe a little bit of narrative around who are we recharging to as well, because this could be recharges can be quite complicated.
No, that's fine. If I can revert back to committee members afterwards.
No further question. Move on to Ventnor Harbour. It's more good news.
I will endeavour to give you the best news I can, Chair. However, contracted services have been forecast close to budget. I think as we've reported at the Harbour Committee before, we'd let a 2-year contract for seaweed removal to Cheetham Marine. Unfortunately, that is considerably above the available budget. There has been an in-year environment from corporate contingency to offset that, and it has been earmarked as a budget pressure going forwards as part of the budget setting process. It does link into the update I will give later in terms of the Ventnor Harbour future management option. The only other key point to note is the income at Ventnor Harbour. There's a forecast under recovery of £2,500. That is consistent with previous years and reflects the fact that the income budget is actually too high, which is a further budget pressure. I think it's a fair comment to say that when the moorings were removed in the harbour a number of years ago because they weren't viable, the budget wasn't adjusted to reflect that. So unfortunately, that's a legacy of failing to address the issue at the time. So that's the two main points. I welcome any questions.
And that's reflected in these numbers still, Sean. So we'd be assured that we could take care of that for ongoing years. If the berth's not there and we're forecasting income from them, we're just kidding ourselves.
Yes, we flagged it up as a budget pressure of our budget accountant to address as part of the budget setting process for next year.
Any questions on Ventnor? There we go. No questions. Thank you for that, Sean. We'll move on to reports from you, Jonathan, on Newport Harbour. That's page 13 and 14, members. And any outstanding actions we've got. Over to you, Jonathan.
I'm afraid it's me again, Chairman. I'll cover the Newport Harbour outstanding audit actions and the Ventnor Harbour Get Well plan, because they link to the verbal report I'll give on the recent audit. The Newport Harbour outstanding audit actions, I'm pleased to say that the majority of those are now complete. The additional items dated October 2021 basically all relate to the Marine Safety Management Plan and Safety Management System. Jonathan's put a lot of work into bringing that up to date following the last audit. And with the next few days, we're in a position to issue version 1.4, which will address all of the issues A1 to A9. and items A and C will also be completed in the next couple of weeks. So that will conclude all of the actions from the previous audits dated November 20 and October 21. There are additional items which will come forward from the latest audit, and I'll cover those separately. You're welcome to take any questions on the Newport actions.
Thanks, Sean. Any questions on that? This is item 6I, page 13. Okay with that? Small amount of actions anyway compared to Ventnor. Okay, thank you. We'll find it. Can we do that for Ventnor as well, please? It's
Yes, Chair, just in terms of Ventnor, I think as we reported last time, given the limited resource we had available at the time to work on the Port Marine Safety Code compliance actions, Jonathan's focus would be Newport to get that back to a state of being compliant. And as I just reported, he's done an excellent job in getting version 1.4 ready to issue. We've looked at the Ventnor Harbour Get Well plan. That's been subject to a recent audit, and we've now deferred the majority of the actions to the last month of this year. The main reason for doing that is lack of capacity to be able to deliver on both. So we thought it prudent to focus on one. And also all of the systems and procedures that have now been revised and will shortly be issued for Newport will then be mirrored for Ventnor. So it should be a lot easier process. It'll be a case of replacing Ventnor for Newport, streamlining some of the processes and procedures, and it should be a lot quicker to achieve and be able to report compliance in relation to the Port Marine Safety Code early next year.
special. Any questions? Chris?
Yeah, just a question. It's about both actually, but specifically comes up under that. When we are updating elements on the website, presumably all the new changes that we are putting through and advice are going onto the new website. We're not putting them onto the old website, then you're going to have to redo it again, are we?
The iWrite.com entries for both Newport and Ventnor currently sit on the old system. So we are updating those until such time as it moves across to the new system. So it is a slight duplication at this moment in time.
Not good, is it? Do you know when that element of the new website will be available to you? At least in the beta version.
I know at this moment in time it's part of the next phase, although we haven't got a date for that as a service.
So that's fairly imminent.
Yes.
So I think we need to
We
make
can
sure.
take that as an action to
Yeah.
ask IT when that's planned.
And just to make sure at the earliest possible opportunity, we move over to the new website.
Sure then.
Just to pick up on item 7, consider forming a Ventnor Harbour user group. So you consider, does that mean you're going to, or you're just having to think about it, or like I was saying, think from Newport's perspective, speak for all three of us at the end of the table here. It's been really, really good, positive move forward. We had the action group going, is it 4 or 5 years now, Sean? Something like that. But it's been really, really helpful, especially doing the Harbour Master Plan stuff, all the Get Well plan. So if you're just considering it, I think from my perspective as a Newport member, I think it's been really, really successful.
I think it's just terminology. I think we will form a Newport Ventnor Harbour user group. Obviously, we have Cheetah Marine. We've got a number of private fishermen. We've got a town council. We've got board members. So yes, no, it's something we want to do. I'll make sure we amend the wording to say we will.
Thank you, Sean.
So I've got another question. Sorry, anyone else want to ask a question? Sorry, I know we hog everything, but sorry, Chair. It was just
Chris?
more of a philosophical question, really. Talk about the Newport Harbour, Ventnor Harbour Revision Order 1994. So that was when the harbour was created. It's a statutory harbour. Given all the issues we have with the harbour, with the seaweed removal, have we ever considered a harbour revision order to not make it a statutory harbour?
Chair, if I may, can
Sure,
I cover that?
yeah,
as part of the- Can I cover
It's
that?
flew across it.
Can I cover that as part of the update in terms of the Ventnor Harbour future? If that's okay.
Yes, you may. Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm not causing trouble. I was just, it was just a philosophical question, really. I've just seen how much it's costing each year to get rid of the seaweed. That's all.
Are we confident, Sean, Jonathan, that everything's dated end of the calendar year? Oh, not all of it, sorry. There's one that's July, the rest are December. And we're confident we're going to get close to delivering that this year, or is some of that going to slip? What's your view?
I'm not going to speak for Jonathan, but that is certainly the target date, notwithstanding anything unforeseen which might happen, which might detract from Jonathan's capacity.
We've got a December meeting, I think, from memory, haven't we? Could we have well, I know we'll have to report, but just see if we have made some progress. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just for sort of say thank you to all the work that's been done. I think doing Newport first, which is probably obviously a bigger harbour and a bigger, tougher nut to crack. I think there's been a lot of learning from that process, and also using some of the policies and strategies. So it's been really, really useful. So though if people are new to this and not seeing the action plan, it's like quite a lot when you compare Newport. That's because Newport went first. So just well done.
Taking care of Newport, Julie.
Mentioned Newport recently. Sorry, Chair.
Any further questions? Sorry. Okay.
We've covered that, Chair. It's now the Senior Harbour Master report.
Afternoon all. The report is in the same format as always. It's only up to the 14th of September when I wrote it. So that's why the figures for September are down. It's only half of the month. I just quickly went through the books today. Our visitors numbers is actually 206, and we've had 6 short stays up to today. So that's why the numbers are down. Navigation risks are the same. It's still the leisure vessels contacting other things, and it's also the commercial passenger ferries, but they're the same risks. We haven't had any problems with, and all the other risks have remained the same. Operational information. The main one is we've employed a new deputy harbour master, so we're back up to 2 deputy harbour masters. He's been on post for about 2 months now and seems to be fitting in very nicely. The events, the harbour's been very busy. We've had the Armed Forces Day. Both of the carnivals have terminated at the trolley, so it's at the harbour, which is great to see that harbour estate is actually being used for other things than boats. Navigation inspections, all of them seem to be going all right. We were checked. We had our Trinity House inspection was this morning, and the verbal report I got back when I was going up and down the river with him was that he was happy, everything was in place and as it should be. Most of it seems to be all right. We got a new harbour ladder for the quay halfway along our visitors' pontoon, was replaced in the last 3 months. We've now cleared what was Little London, which is one of the quays on the west side of the harbour. So that's ready for the new leaseholders. With the hose pipe ban coming into place, we've actually put notices on all of the taps on the harbours to inform people that it exists. Been inspecting all of the sites and no major problems have happened. Anything that needed to be replaced has been. The launch and the works vehicle's been working very well. The only sort of major one that you might have seen is that we had one of the boats tied up on the quay, but unfortunately lent the wrong way from the quay, and when the tide went out, lowered. So then you might have seen the pictures of the mast at 45 degrees. That was when it refloated. It floated straight back up again, and staff secured it, so it didn't happen again. We checked the boat, and it was fine. But reports have been issued for that. So that was the only sort of major incident we've had. The only annoying sort of dangerous occurrence is when it was warm. how do I put this nicely? We had a lot of young individuals that were suffering from being very hot and thought it was a great idea to go swimming in the harbour, and they weren't overly compliant to advice, let's say. So that was a little bit of a problem with it. But other than that, seemed to be all right. The other one is the harbour seems to be quite a popular place for meeting groups for, as they nickname the Fast and Furious crowd. A lot of them believe that stickers equal horsepower, and they seem to sort of congregate and try and have, so they can cause noise, but that's something we're looking into. Also with bird flu around the place, we've had a couple of, sadly, some seagulls that haven't survived. They've been collected by the harbour staff and all to DEFRA, but that has now ceased. It was only for about 2 weeks. Other than that, we seem to be sort of going along. Things that have changed, history of it, we've finally got rid of the Yale locks on our harbour facilities. We've now changed them to a coded system. Quite funny, some of our long-term visitors have been so attached to their keys, they've actually asked if they could keep them because they've had them for so long. Other than that, we seem to be going okay. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. For that, Matt. I just, Jonathan, thank you for this extensive report, and a lot of what you do goes into that. And we do thank you as a committee for that work that you put in. Matt.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, first of all, just to go back to the Get Well plan and everything. I mean, really, you know, where we started, I think I said this at the last meeting, where we started a few years ago, it's in an entirely different place. So I think the team certainly need commending for that, because it was I think there was a time where we probably looked at it and thought it would never, ever be completed. And we're on the cusp of probably completing all the actions that we had to start with. So I think that's great. With regards to the use of the harbour, it's great to see the harbour being used. And of course we want to see it used more. I would like to see the classic car extravaganza back on Newport Quay on a Saturday. So you can stop, Councillor Jordan, shaking your head at that, because you know, I think I don't want to speak on behalf of the Newport councillors, but I'm sure they would agree with me that it was a good thing for Newport. And I know Mr. Gallucci would be very keen to discuss it. I probably would ask, is anyone in dialogue with Mr. Gallucci? And if not, could we put him back in touch with you? And also, just to quickly touch on the boy racers, there's always a balancing act with this, because you know, that most of them are actually all right. They don't cause any trouble. They do want to sit there and admire each other's cars and stuff, and I've probably been guilty of that at times myself in the past. But there's obviously always a small minority that ruin things by doing donuts across Victoria Rec recently, and revving their engines at 1 o'clock in the morning and wheel spinning and stuff like that. Overall, they're a pretty peaceful bunch. But you know, I know myself and Councillor Jones Evans engaged with the police regular, and I know they are going up to Sea Close and going along the harbour quite regular. It is an action point that they've got. So hopefully that their presence, they've been interacting with them, and I get good feedback as to how they interact with them. It does always seem like a small minority, but obviously at the moment there seems to be a whole raft of young people that have been let loose since COVID, and they've all got noisy exhausts and they're driving like lunatics at the moment. And I hope the road policing unit will help sort of bring some of that under control in the future. But yeah, any comments on the classic car extravaganza coming back to Newport would be welcome.
No, just thank you for that, Councillor Price. Just in terms of the nighttime vehicle use, we have spoken to the PCSO who sits on the Newport Harbour User Group, and she's been in contact with at least one of the residents who's been making note of registrations, and they've been actively trying to educate the users around their behaviour and try and improve that to form a partnership and relationship. So not to come down too heavy-handed unnecessarily. In terms of using the harbour for classic car events. The harbour remains available. The only caveat I would say is Regeneration are looking at some meanwhile uses to bring on board to generate interest and income into the harbour, which may reduce the amount of land available. But certainly we'd welcome a discussion, which we need to have in conjunction with Regeneration to make sure it doesn't stymie any of their plans. But no, more than welcome that.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, we'll have one day and Ryde can have the other.
Just before Christmas, so there is an arrangement with Ryde Town Council and Vic for 5 years, but there we are.
I was just about to sort of say, I think we had a proposal from Mr. Gallucci a few years ago at Newport for some funding to help. I think our finance lead at the time, who's now at Cowes, I think was against it. So that might help if we have further discussions, and might be worth us putting a budget bid in, maybe, Matthew. So I just want to talk about if I may, the swimming situation, because obviously that is a recurring thing, isn't it? I'm just wondering, is it worthwhile getting ready for next summer, considering we have another hot one if the global warming is going to continue? Whether there should be some sort of, notices or campaign about it. I don't know whether if you bring attention to it, people are like, oh, that's a good idea, but my son's been guilty of doing that in the past. I have told him the dangers of doing so, but it does look very attractive on the way home from a night out, doesn't it, if you're hot? So
at present, there are signs along the quay saying no swimming. And with the incident, a lot of them, when you talk to them, point out, do they want to be swimming in the river? And then point out that them jumping from the quay walls and such are they certain of the depth of the water and everything else? A lot of them take the advice and depart. Some of them don't take it politely, let's say, and then at that point we have passed it on to, we've phoned the local police, and they've come down and also given them advice. So it's sort of something ongoing. But a lot of them, when you point out that it's not very deep at times.
I guess I was just thinking of maybe some messaging for next summer, like on our Isle of Wight Council, social media, that kind of thing, whether we could put, do a little info up there. And just thank you for the work you're doing with the PCSOs regarding the buoy races, for want of a better word. I think there was a really successful programme about 10 years ago when VOSPA were coming down as well, and they were checking the vehicles that they've been modified against their insurance, because quite often they don't tell their insurers that they've done that. So it's another great way of interacting and doing that check. That was really quite successful last time. But I know the policing have sort of shrunk a bit, but that was really good. But yeah, I mean, it is really irritating to residents because it just echoes all around the harbour. So everyone is on Carpenters and down that side, as well as the houseboats the other side as well. So just want to thank you for the work. I'm just going to keep going with it, really. But very, very frustrating. It's an ongoing problem. They if we get sorted down there, they usually go somewhere else, so then they come back again. But as you say, with the meanwhile use we've got planned for the harbour for the next year to 5 years, there may be less room for them to congregate anyway. So have to see how that goes.
They do come to Ryde.
Oh, they're welcome in Ryde, are they? You say?
I said they come to Ryde. I didn't say they were welcome in. I said they come to Ryde. Chris.
I've only actually seen people swimming in there once, and that was a group of young lads who were very visible from the Bargeman's Rest, who were skinny dipping in there, completely oblivious to all the people at the Bargeman's Rest who were watching them. I was just wondering whether perhaps some CCTV there might, I don't know whether that would persuade them not to skinny dip or swim at all, or maybe encourage them, I don't know, but maybe some CCTV there. I don't know where exactly it's located, but something along those lines. The other question that I really had was to inquire what the dispensation was regarding the shooting incident.
That was, we got reports of 3 young men or teenagers, probably young men, down on the quay with a BB gun. We realised it. Luckily, we had 3 members of harbour staff in at the time. We told them to cease and depart. And at the same time, we contacted the police to point out that there were 3 individuals with a BB gun. We kept them monitored until and got them to leave. Police came down and gave good descriptions. I believe that they were recovered, sat in the Bargeman's Rest garden. So I believe that was sorted. 2 of the individuals in the bargemans, I don't think had the BB gun with them. The 3rd individual that went up through sea close, I believe had the gun. But we gave them decent descriptions of them.
Final question, you'd be pleased to hear, Chair. Thank you. Just regarding the 2.5, the pollution, it's just unrecorded. Would we record any sewage discharge from Southern Water into pollution, or would that be? Do we not record that?
Southern Water record what they discharge, but if we don't witness it, we don't record it. So it's only pollution that we are aware of. So if we see a lot of oil on the top of the surface of the water, we would record it. If we saw, how can I put this politely, evidence of sewage discharge, we would report it. But as Southern Water do send out emails, and they've got their own recording system of actually when their discharge has been operated, we don't try and record what they already record. So it's only the stuff we see.
Yeah. Next is that we've had a number of incidents around the island, including in the West White, of dead birds, including dead seagulls from bird flu. And I know that in some areas that's decimated some populations. I gather it's a reportable issue, if you suspect it. When you find dead seagulls or other dead birds in and around the harbour, what is the mechanism for reporting that in case it is indeed bird flu?
So the couple that we did find around the place, the harbour staff retrieved them, double bagged them, and then binned them. And then we rang up DEFRA and informed them what species it was and the numbers of them. So every time we found them, we recorded them. Larger birds, they will come and recover themselves. So worst case scenario, if we had a swan, they'd be very interested to know what that is. Seagulls, they don't recover because A, there's so many of them, and B, there's so many other things they could keel over from. So it was only for about a month during the busy period, and the harbour was a lot busier because all the tarmac and cars were too hot for them to sit on, so they actually seemed to be back on the harbour. But all of the ones that we recovered, we reported.
Do you incinerate the remains that are not recovered? Presumably they're not just put into a bin.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just going back to Councillor Jones-Evans' comments about the Southern Water discharge that we've obviously all been aware of. Certainly Newport members would be aware of that does happen in Newport Harbour. Do they notify the council or the Harbour Authority that is happening? And I wonder if do they provide a report? I know obviously they may publicly announce when it's going to happen, or it's recorded publicly, but often these things you have to go and find, don't you? They're not given to you.
Quite nice to have it.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's something that we could ask them to give us a yearly report on, because I think the whole of the River Medina, any areas that are discharged, that sewage is discharged into, we need to perhaps have an understanding as a council how regularly that's happening. It's a difficult thing to gain these bits of information, isn't it? But as an authority, is it something we could ask Southern Water to provide us a yearly report of?
At present, I get about somewhere between, when there's a lot of storms, I get about 20 emails that's everything on the Isle of Wight that's discharged, and it's got a code number and said that this has been discharged for 15 minutes. But it's not in any system. I just get 15 emails. So when it storms, And none of it's pre-planned, so it's always after the fact. So at the moment, we only report what we notice, because a lot of it's mid-river or in the storms. We've got so much water coming down from the rivers anyway. I think the amount they discharge in the grand total of volume of water, a lot of the time isn't noticed.
So I might be able to assist you there. So we have in the West White now got access to the site where they actually give us all the discharges. There is a component that measures both the flow and the duration of what came out from the combined sewer overflows. You have to be careful not to use the site which only refers to bathing beaches, which the Isle of Wight Council has a separate contract for, and which we do an alert system on. But there is a separate Southern Water site which simply gives all of the combined sewer overflows around the island. There isn't at the moment an anticipatory element to it. One could argue if there was an anticipatory element, what you would do about it anyway, really. Because that way, nobody's go down there and blocking them up. But then they do serve a purpose and it is required to do it. But I think the information of monitoring them and monitoring how much flow and for how many hours each one of them has a flow is very, very valuable for our discussions with Southern Water.
I mean, essentially, this is our land, isn't it? I mean, we own the riverbed here for this whole extent of the harbour. So essentially, I think we should know really the extent of what's been put when and how much has been put into our property. I think we have got residents there as well. It's really not very pleasant, is it? And they need to get their act together.
We do also, by monitoring the site, go around the areas where there have been discharges and put up notices now where for warning people that they should not swim here.
Yeah.
Not only that you shouldn't generally swim, but you specifically should not swim at the moment.
Can I take that we asked if the committee, if it's possible, without being disproportionate amount of work on staff, could get that data? Is that what we're asking? That seems what I'm hearing.
The question here would be, what would we do with it? We'd have to have a plan to do something with it, I suspect.
That was my thoughts, Chris. That's why I'm asking it. Are we asking for that?
Sorry.
Chairman, I wonder as well, perhaps a future agenda item could be that we maybe ask if a representative from Southern Water could come along and speak to us about sewage discharges into our river. The harbour is a huge amount of the river, or the harbour estate is a huge amount of the river, and I think it would be an interesting thing to understand, because of course we can all be a little bit you could almost be taking it that a sewage discharge is a really dangerous thing to happen. But as Jonathan said, in the grand scheme of things, with the amount of water that flows into the harbour from the Lukeley Brook and the Fairley Hole and all the other places, and Pan Stream, where it all comes from, there's a huge amount of unpolluted water there. And the amount of sewage that comes out in a sewage discharge is not always raw sewage, is it? It's often a mix of mostly stormwater, isn't it? So the amount of sewage in it can be quite minimal, and I think it'd be good to understand that. So we aren't assuming it's a much worse. I mean, obviously any sewage is bad. Don't get me wrong, but understanding that it might be just, it could be a few gallons a year, couldn't it?
I guess for me, it's about having less as possible. So if they've got their own get well plan for sewage discharge, which they say they do across the island, then we need to know about how that affects our harbour.
So I'll come. Sean's got some comments for us, but I think we can make that as an action. We can certainly ask Southern Water to come. They can say yes or no, can't they? I'm just going to Sean, Chris, and I'll come back.
Thank you, Chair. We brought a report to the Harbour Committee before, which detailed the outfalls located, the combined storm overflows, which discharge directly into the river, and there are 5 of those. There's also 3 other storm outfalls which discharge into the river indirectly, either through pipes or water courses. As Jonathan said, all of those are monitored in real time, and Jonathan gets the emails from those. Perhaps I can suggest that over the next 6 months, which is probably going to be the highest number of discharges, we can monitor those. Perhaps invite a representative from Southern Water to the March meeting. When we've got that data, we can give it to them in advance of the meeting, then ask them to pass comment in terms of those 8 outfalls which discharge in light of the volumes and the times of discharges that have taken place, and ask them what their plans are in relation to those to mitigate and reduce down to the lowest possible level.
I'm sure that's very helpful. I'll come to you, Chris, but that sounds like a proposal for us to come for next March with data and invite Southern Water. If you're agreed on that, we'll make that as an action point. Chris?
Yeah, Southern Water actually have real-time telemetry from their combined sewer overflows. Could we ask, as well as us coming with our data, could we ask them to come along with their data, which I'm sure they have anyway, we know that, and in particular, not only the data for each of those locations, but other places along the river, I think, which might add to that, because the river does flow north, and of course it flows into the Solent, which is a protected environment, and in particular for the nitrate levels and the nitrate concentrations that go out that way. So they will have all that information, and as well as our information, which I'm sure is useful, but is probably going to be less detailed. It would be very good to have their information at the meeting.
I think the action is very clear that we collect that data and ask them for next March. And if you're happy with that, let's accept that, shall we, committee? Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Chair. This relates to the Port Marine Safety Code audit, which took place on the 20th September, which was led by Jonathan in conjunction with David Foster, who's our designated person ashore, through Marico. I haven't got David's report as of yet, the final version. We've got a draft which we're currently reviewing. I thought it'd be useful to report back to committees key points and findings at this stage, and we'll have the full report presented to us by David in person in December, by which time we'll also have made some progress in terms of rectifying some of the actions. But in terms of key points, as I reported earlier, the majority of recommendations in the previous audit report have been completed. The reorganisation of the harbour staff has been completed, and as Jonathan said, we have 2 duty harbour masters and 2 relief harbour masters. They now provide 7-day-a-week coverage over the high water period, which was something, members will recall, we didn't have before. As a general comment, David felt the harbour was looking very tidy and very well cared for, and was a credit to Jonathan and the team for making sure it's in that condition. He noted that the Harbour Master's office has been refurbished and provides significantly improved working conditions. The Harbour User Group has been fully reinstated post-COVID and now meets face-to-face on a quarterly basis. The processes for incident reporting, recording and investigation, he's recommended that these are reviewed. Whilst they are set out in the safety management system, we felt there's a little bit of room for improvement in terms of clarifying those processes. And Jonathan and I have had a chat with David already in terms of how we can do that, so that when we issue 1.4 of a safety management system, there is that degree of clarity which has been established. Procedures for tracking staff training and qualifications has been modified and improved. We've instigated a memorandum of understanding with ourselves, Cowes, Yarmouth and Bembridge harbours, which will provide mutual support in the event of an oil spill in any of the harbours. We've continued to maintain a robust campaign to remove derelict vessels from the harbour and also some ashore. And finally, additional procedures for Blade Runner have been reviewed and have been found satisfactory. So all in all, in terms of the key points, that's positive. There's a couple of actions there which Jonathan's aware of, and I attended the wash-up meeting with Jonathan and David at the end of his day's visit. Welcome any questions.
Any questions on? No questions. Thank you, Sean. Committee, that we go item 8 and 9, or do you want to swap 9 before 8? Which is just item 9 is an update on Ventnor Harbour, and do the Asking. Okay. Therefore, item 8 is the proposed freehold disposal of land and building at Black House Keys, Newport Harbour, pages 21 to 36. Sean, is there anything you want to add to the report that you've given us?
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully the paper clearly sets out what we're looking to achieve here, which is approval to negotiate with Isle of Wight Espresso Company as a special purchaser for land and buildings situated at Black House Quay, which is also known as W5 and W6. If it is agreed today to proceed, any disposal would be subject to a further report to the Harbour Committee to ensure we're receiving best consideration from the disposal. It's worth noting the tenant's currently holding over on the lease for the building known as W5. That has expired, and that is a full repairing and insuring lease. The rent currently attained for both the land and the building is at a very low level. This reflects the fact they are old, antiquated leases with no rent review mechanisms. From the meetings I've had with Isle of Wight Espresso Company, they feel that given the proposed level of investment into the site and the opportunity to increase employment and increase the offer to residents and visitors, that from their perspective, the purchase of the freehold of the land and the building are key to making that commercially viable, as opposed to a long lease on either site. I've discussed the proposal with Chris Ashman, Director of Regeneration, and he's advised there's no reason not to proceed with a disposal and a proposed development, and it does not impinge on the master plan or any part of the delivery of the harbour regeneration. The disposal of the land and the building would result in a capital receipt to the council, and this would be ring-fenced to the Newport Harbour accounts and would actually put us in a very fortuitous position. The harbour would actually have a reserve it could call upon for unscheduled works, which in the past we've had to bid for capital for. So it would help the harbour to be the start of being self-sustaining. The potential capital receipt will only be known once an independent valuation of the land and building is undertaken and received, and the cost of those valuations would be borne by the potential purchaser, i.e. the Isle of Wight Espresso Company. So the paper seeks approval to move forward to obtain those valuations and to undertake the work in terms of a cost-benefit analysis, in terms of future rent versus capital disposal, and then we will bring a report back to a future Harbour Committee with the findings of that, with a recommendation either to proceed or not.
Any questions? It does lead me on something I'll bring up, and we spoke, and I expect Joseph, I'll ask you to speak after Joseph. There were two members who weren't here when we had a discussion. On the powers of this committee to do certain things, such as agree to the disposal of this land, which has to go to full council. One wonders why we're considering it any other than we can recommend yes or no. I'm astonished by it, but there we are. We are not discussing that, Chris. I'm saying that, and we'll come to it in the members' questions, that there are restrictions on what is the powers of this committee, and they do stretch as far as agreeing to dispose of land in the harbour.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's worthwhile pointing out that, and it's does say in the report, that this isn't surplus to requirements of the, we're not putting up for disposal ourselves, are we? We've been approached by a tenant. And yeah, it's all very complicated around this area, if I may say, because if you look at section, paragraph 7, we're talking about a 125-year lease, which was granted in 1990 at the paltry sum of £25 an annum. Now, of course, if you look at the harbour regulations as they were, you weren't allowed to grant any leases more than 3 years. So this was what they call, I guess, ultra vires at the time, which is why it's led to us in order to facilitate and make happen the harbour master plan, that we've got the harbour revision order where we are able to make longer leases. So I guess one of the questions within that sort of preamble really is how many of these leases do we still have in the harbour? I'd be quite interested. I mean, this route, I guess, is a way of getting away from this situation, this ultra virus situation, and becoming, you know, on the straight and narrow again, if you like. Oh, are we just to get heading straight in my head? I have read the report, but I must have just forgotten. Are we looking at another long lease, or are we looking at a freehold disposal?
Julie,
did say freehold in there, various
four
options.
options.
Yeah.
Not dispose of the building at all, obviously, to offer the building on the open market, so not as preferred. We're being asked, the other two options, to offer a new lease or to treat the company as a special purchaser. And there's a recommendation on that, which is treat the company as a special purchaser. So we're being asked to decide one of those four things. Either dispose of it, don't dispose of it, lease it, or sell it.
So we're not
deciding
we're
because
not
full
looking at the
council have got to do
we're
that.
not looking at the detail, whether it's going to be a long lease or whether it's going to be a capital or just a freehold capital receipt. We're not deciding that today.
We're deciding, yes.
Matt, so just to save any confusion, we're going to give a recommendation to full council. Simple as that, yeah?
I'm going to bring this up afterwards, that for me, and unless I've misunderstood an exchange of emails, there appear to be limitations on the powers of this committee, and that some matters are referred to full council. Now, I may have misunderstood that, but that seems to be the position. Shall we, I was going to bring it up in members' questions. I'll come to you, Chris. Shall we just deal with this now? Because for me, it's also confusing, Matt. Joseph, would you just like to comment on that, please? So this is in general terms, not the specific decision we're making.
Yeah, so thank you. In general terms, Harbour Committee has very specific powers on what it can do, and then it can make recommendations to full council on the restrictions. I intend to circulate a full advice note setting out exactly what that is, what it isn't, and the legal framework behind that as to why it falls like that. Also, due to the wording of constitutions covering disposals as well, but my understanding is that for this one, well, disposals generally, that's delegated, and that is something which would be under. Sean, if you want to take that point.
Thanks, Joe. The intention for this paper was to make it an in-principle decision to move forward with the negotiations for freehold disposal, subject to valuations being undertaken at the current tenant's cost, with a further report coming back to this committee in terms of whether we are happy to move forwards in terms of that disposal, and that has been this committee's gift to do that. And just following on in terms of your question, Julie, there are 23 leases or licenses within Newport Harbour, some of which have been granted since the new harbour revision order, so are longer than the previous 3 years, but the majority are within the 3 years. And I can circulate to the committee a schedule of those leases and licenses.
Is that any clearer?
So I think that's very worthwhile work to be done, Joseph. So we'll look forward to that. So in the meanwhile, I'm going to propose a motion that we accept the recommendation to grant special purchaser provision here. So that doesn't mean that we're actually giving permission to sell the land, but we are only giving permission to use that special status during the current negotiations.
Could I just add to your proposal, if I may? It was basically just to again ensure, as I've promised residents down the harbour, this would not impact on our municipal moorings down there, our houseboats.
That's been answered.
Yeah, and it's completely aligned with the Isle of Wight Council Harbour Master Plan, which is about to become going to Cabinet to become an SPD in the next few months.
So I've had a proposal.
I'm happy to second Councillor Jarman's proposal. If I could just say, I did know about this proposal in advance, and I've had conversations with the Yeah, the Isle of Wight Espresso Company. And I don't think there's any doubt at all that they're a company with a track record. And this kind of offer that could come into the harbour is something that is actually needed. There's a number of things that will attract more footfall to the harbour, either by foot or by boat, whatever. I think we should seriously understand that this is something that a local company that's got a proven track record of delivering, if they were to finalise an agreement, that they would probably be creating something that is a viable, attractive offer for the harbour. I just wanted to sort of tie it to regeneration, because this is actually another step towards regeneration of the harbour. So yeah, I'm very happy to second this.
Thank you, Matt. Ryan, any further comments? We'll vote on this. Please show that's unanimous.
Can I just caveat? Sean, I'm only interested in the.
Caveats.
So just Sean's going to provide some information. I'm only really interested in the ones that are not within the 3-year rule. That's all. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, that leaves us finally, apart from members' questions on update on Ventnor Harbour, Sean, on the contract.
Thank you, Chair. As I reported earlier, the council has a 2-year contract for the removal of seaweed. We are currently midway through year 1. Following conversations with yourself, Chair, we agreed to go to the market to ascertain interest in a 5-year management contract for the harbour. That contract will be to manage all aspects of the harbour, typically including supervision, management of berths, collection of income, maintenance of pontoons, full insuring liability, provision of monthly, quarterly and annual reports, continued compliance with Port Marine Safety Code, all the aspects of management that we currently undertake but outsourced to a third party. The potential supplier would benefit from the income derived from the moorings, and subject to the authority's approval, any relevant permissions would be able to implement improvements into the harbour which may generate additional income. They would of course be responsible for removal of the seaweed from the harbour and for covering that cost. We've been out to the market. The tender period actually closed 2 p.m. yesterday, and I can report to committee we have 2 submissions. Obviously, at the moment, I can't disclose who they're from or what the values are, because we haven't started the evaluation process yet. That's due to start in the next few days, and that will be complete by the 13th of October. Following notification to suppliers of preferred supplier status, assuming they one or both meet all of the essential criteria in the contract, we will be looking to take an award paper to Cabinet on the 10th of November, and subject to that being approved, a 5-year management contract would commence on the 1st of April 2023. Touching on the point, coming back to the point Julie made earlier about have we considered a harbour revision order for closure of Ventnor as a statutory port, that is something we would look at in parallel to facilitate a potential freehold disposal of the harbour to a third party, and that may be as a preferred supplier basis, as we've just been discussing. So it's a twin track approach. It's potentially to outsource the complete management of the harbour to a third party with a view of a potential freehold disposal, which would then remove responsibility away from the council to a third party, and we no longer be incurring costs for the management. Welcome any questions.
Thanks, Sean. Chris, I'll come to you, Matt, after.
So the timescale is very good, because you'll be able to feed those numbers into the current budget planning cycle, which is active now, and that'll give us an idea of what the fiscal uptake required for this year and next year will be, and perhaps give us an indication of what the options will be to exit from that financial contribution.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I don't want to tread on any other councillors' toes or anything when it comes to another area of the island, but I know if this, if we were talking right now about the potential for Newport Harbour freehold to be disposed of, Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council would probably be all over it, wouldn't it? Councillor Jones Evans, I think. If
Wanting to take it over, you mean?
if Newport Harbour was about to be disposed of, we would be wanting to do something, wouldn't we? I'm not saying we want to take it over, but we would want to be doing something.
Newport's a good working harbour, isn't it?
But, and I understand that Ventnor is a financial millstone, really, isn't it? Let's face it. But point I'm getting at really I know there have been previous discussions with the town council in Ventnor. Is there anything ongoing? Are they? I know you probably can't tell us if they're one of the preferred. I'm sure they aren't, but you know, people that have shown interest in this. But I think, you know, from public perception, it looks like a bit of public real estate that is going to be disposed of. And of course, these kind of things, if they fall into private ownership, we can end up with a whole different scenario like we've got down at Island Harbour, for instance. I'm just thinking, you know, is there any more discussions that can take place to ensure that Ventnor Town Council have had the opportunity to, they may not want it, of course, but I'm just looking at it from I sit on 2 parish councils, and I know that both of those would want to be included in these discussions. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Over the last 3-4 years, we've been in close dialogue with Ventnor Town Council regarding the future of the harbour and options for future management and disposal. They've been kept fully briefed in terms of the process. I'm aware of the 5-year management contract. If and when we get to the stage we do have a new harbour revision order, which will facilitate the freehold disposal, then of course we will continue those discussions. And as members will be aware, we've recently disposed of a freehold of Ryde Harbour to Ryde Town Council. So there is a precedent for doing that.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Matt. I'll come to you. And also, Sean, for clarity, disposing of a statutory harbour would be like putting it in terms of Bembridge. It's quite rare, aren't they? Privately owned statutory harbours. Am I right in saying that?
I think it's,
In other words, you'd have to have a revision order to take it from the statutory harbour before you sold it.
That's actually my question, Chair. Is it the same length of time we're looking at as we had? It was about 3 years for Newport, wasn't it, roughly? I think with COVID in between. So is it the same kind of timescale we're looking at for reversing?
I can't imagine it would be significantly different. We would be beholden to the MMO, Marine Management Organisation, in terms of the process. There's a process we have to follow, and a lot of that process is led and driven by them and consultation based. So the short answer is yes, it will be similar.
I think we have to look at this in the round. I think this obviously Newport, we've got our own harbour account, everything goes into that. Is it the same for Ventnor, or it's the same for Ventnor as well? Yeah, but the Isle of Wight Council would subsidise it. I'm guessing we put money into to make the account, make it space.
We do currently.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll need to analyse the submissions we've had and see what the financial model of the 2 parties that have expressed an interest is, whether that's to pay the council for privilege of running Ventnor Harbour, or whether they require a subsidy and how that relates to the current subsidy.
Lot to think about, especially with the current finances of the council and the country. Really, we have to look at everything, don't we?
I think, speaking out of turn, that Ventnor Town Council were put off to some extent in the cost of seaweed removal, and we're looking at partnership ways if they moved in that direction. But they did call, and we had discussions in Ryde with them at the time of the Ryde disposal, but we couldn't get it over the line for them at the time. Ray, by the way.
Is that on? Basically, my question is about the seaweed. I given to understand, Sean, that you were saying that was inclusive in the sale that they take on the responsibility of, which is going to be a huge burden financially for them because it was expensive the last meeting I was at. Was it 20,000 or something around that?
The current annual cost for the 2-year contract is 103,000.
How much? Sorry.
103.
103,000. Yeah.
Clearly, that is to be delivered in accordance with the existing Marine Management Organisation licence. However, the way the documentation was structured was it gave them the opportunity to review that methodology and propose a new methodology, which may be more cost effective. And that is part of their proposal and something we need to evaluate.
Thanks, Ray. Just for clarity again, did we extend the scope of the contract this time, Sean, or is it like for like with previous contract?
It's like for like because it's beholden to the MMO licence and the methodology within there.
But you're happy with that? Okay. Any further questions? No. That only leaves us for member time. Any member?
Could we think about trying to get a date in the diary again to look at going up the river? Because I think, you know, Jonathan would be easily able to point out all the points at which Southern Water could have potentially emptied stuff into the river at times. But I think it's for the having had that trip before with you, I think it's a really important thing for the committee. We've still got at least another 2.5 years, haven't we, of being on this committee. I think it's really useful for us to have the chance to, certainly ones that sit on this committee, to go up the river and see all of the responsibilities the Isle of Wight Council has as the harbour authority.
Thanks, Matt. Are we able to, at some future point, arrange that for, we're talking about committee members only?
Well, I think it would be worth, I don't think you should invite that necessarily the whole of the Isle of Wight Council, but I think it might be useful to offer it out to Newport members as well. Don't you think?
That one at the end, that big charter boat down the end. Councillors on jolly.
If I could just add that most water taxis are licensed for sort of 12. So if we can keep it around sort of 10 or more, then if there's more than that, we can always go.
Darryl and okay, so committee members and Newport councillors. Okay. Yeah, okay. We'll take that as an action plan and try and arrange it. I know when we tried to do the walkabout, we couldn't quite get it going because of all sorts of reasons. Well, diary clashes and stuff. We just didn't manage it, did we? We still haven't done that. Yeah, lunch at the folly. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Ray.
I'm guessing this committee hasn't much say in regarding Island Harbour. Is there any impact at all regarding our remit? The information?
We got contacted by a couple of people that had booked berths in Island Harbour. That was the first we heard of it. So at the moment, as they're not taking visitors, we're getting their visitors. So it's fringe benefit for us. I haven't heard any more about what their plans are and going forwards. Most of our jurisdiction stops at the lock gates, so it's only a chunk of their waiting pontoon that's part of the harbour estate, and they do lease a section of that. But when the administrators contact us, we can point out the costs that they have to us.
Sorry, the administrators haven't been.
I got a phone call late last week saying, "Oh, we're just checking. Can we put lots of moorings outside Island Harbour?" And I said, "No, So they said they'll email us and ask for guides, but I think the guy had only just turned up at Island Harbour, walked around and was just desperately trying to find out which bits was Island Harbour and which bits were other companies. So I'm sure they'll get back to us. So traders are up to speed. Yeah.
Sorry, Julie.
Just really were the committee and everyone in the room aware that there's going to be ice skating down on the harbour on the 19th of November, courtesy of Newport and Carrowford Community Council. Yeah, it's not on actual ice, it's going to be that plastic ice, but yeah, it was really good last year and happy to come down there again. So it's nice to see all these other uses down there.
Finally, and just following on Joseph, because Ray and Matthew weren't here, but an email exchange came on about the powers of the committee and other things, and I was helpfully provided by a list of some of those items that to me sounded contentious at the least. So, I mean, I have concerns about this. I don't want to bash on, but I do have concerns. And one of the items was policies that have to go to full council. Again, if I've misunderstood that, please correct me. But there was a suggestion that even policy changes had to go to full council. I can't remember, and maybe you'll know, Matt, or even you, Julie, the last time full council made a decision about Newport Harbour, and it just seems strange to me. And what seems strange to me is that us as a committee, with the reports that we get, the support we get from our officers, to make decisions about the harbour and Ventnor, but I'm just talking Newport specifically at the moment. That information creates a picture for us as committee members, an understanding and a knowledge and a background that then full council on a one-off has to make a decision about. Seemed rather curious to me that that was the procedure. But I wonder if Joseph, if you just want to say a little more about that.
Yeah, so I think the tricky bit's going to be establishing what that really means, and I will be addressing that in my advice note and circulate that to members, and we'll go from there. Unfortunately, at this stage, I don't think I can add much more, but I will look into it and come back with a lot more detail and deal with it then, if that's okay. Thank you.
I seem to recall we had something about the harbour estate boundary a few years ago. Did that come to full council? No, not doing the revision. It was before there. It was about 10 years ago or something. It was. There's quite a lot of controversy at the time, I seem to recall. But I don't think we've had disposal of any harbour land for quite some time, have we? So we've just got the usual leases, which happen. It's sort of day that's business as usual. But I don't think we've had any disposals.
Let's await further news on this, and I may have misinterpreted this, but it just sounded strange that this committee was meeting and considering as a statutory harbour decisions that I'm now being told may have to be referred to full council, which just seems very curious.
Normally that would go to cabinet, wouldn't it, if it's disposal?
Run the cabinet, but the information I was given it, for example, as a disposal, let's go to full council.
Sorry, can I just clarify? I think it's that particular note addressed closing of statutory harbours, which is separate to disposal of freehold. So you would ideally want to do both at the same time. But the disposals, as far as I'm aware, generally are cabinet and delegated. So that would be like the one we've got today. So I can address that as well in the note just to make sure it's all covered.
Hey.
I'll give you this one. One last thing for Jonathan regarding hose pipes. My understanding is that we are allowed to wash our boats.
My understanding of it is that notices you're not allowed to wash down if you're doing it for safety reasons, so slippery decks or you can't see through your windscreen. That could be questioned, but at the moment we're sort of advising people not to use hose pipes to wash down their boats. If they need to wash down their boats, they can always do itemised areas. At the moment, on our signposts, on all the tabs, we've got a sign we took from Southern Water that says do not use your hose pipe. But they can obviously fill up their water tanks and everything else, but.
Southern Water's website does now allow you to use your hose pipes for washing your vessel down because it's deemed a safety risk. That's the information I've got so far. Ryde Harbour has said that they have to be too. So is East Cowes Marina. There is a link in Southern Water's website.
I mean, we're advising people that please don't, but if they choose to ignore us, then we're not the ones enforcing the £1,000 fine. So I encourage them not to. But if they have changed it in the last sort of notices out when it first came in, so if they have, I'll have a look and just if we need to change it.
It was changed. I think the pressure from
Right, thanks for that, Jonathan. There been no other questions, Chris? Okay, we're clear. That's the end of it. The next meeting is December. I can't remember the date, Marie, but don't worry, we'll circulate that in due course. So just say thanks again for the officer support that we get. Great officer support, the reports and up-to-date information is really, really helpful for us as committee. So thank you all for that. Thank you, Marie, as always, for making sure this goes ahead and we have all that admin support and you get the minutes done and so on and the papers to us in time. So thank you for that. Thank you also, committee members, for engaging and making this committee work and in a positive way. And see you all in December, if not before. Oh, 21st of
That's
December.
our Christmas
I
party,
remember
isn't it?
saying it was a bit close.
It's
Yes.
It's a cracker.
Party's 12 till 2. We'll be down here for 2.
We deal was the
I
21st.
I think it's just, I think there'll definitely be cakes, I think.
Are we happy with the 21st? It is very close to Christmas. But what date is it? Is it a Wednesday before Christmas?
I have to say that's probably, I will be in my shop selling things. So I doubt if I'm going to be here. So let's give you advance notice of that. But then the meeting may go a bit more quickly, Chair.
It
So
may go more quickly with one person here. There's an offer, members. Do you want to put it to January? I'd prefer to be pragmatic, but you know, I know now at the end of summer, beginning of autumn, it's okay. But 4 days before Christmas, we may not feel quite so. Let's be pragmatic. I'm happy either way. You're the committee. Please, Marie, just have a look for another date for us. Thank you. Okay. Meeting ends 3:30. Sorry, it's gone on for probably half hour longer than needed, but I think we've done some good work today. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Enjoy. Good to see you all.